Hello and welcome to another Nikke video. Summer ANIS and Helm's Kit have recently been released and I'm going to be looking over their skills. Hope you enjoy the video. Alright, so this is ANIS Sparkling Summer. She's going to be a supporter. Her burst skill is going to be 3. Her weapon is a shotgun and her code is electric. So we're going to go ahead and look at her first skill here. It says skill 1 is a passive and it's called Sparkling Boost. It says activates when entering full burst. Affects all electric code allies. Attack up 55.31% of caster's attack lasts for 10 seconds. Reload speed up for 49.28% for 10 seconds. Alright, so please note that it does says affects all electric code allies. So if they are not an electric code, unfortunately all these buffs that ANIS will be getting, they will not be shared with them. But luckily there are some powerful Nikkes that are electric. Like for example Scarlet, Noise, Mast, Biscuit, for example. There are some useful Nikkes that are electric that this will help out, especially with the attack up where it shows 55. So this is based off ANIS's attack. So as long as she has a higher attack, she's going to give a bigger boost to those allies. And not only that, the reload speed, I mean, it's almost 50%. So that's going to be a very fast reload for anybody on the team there. So now we're going to look at skill 2. Skill 2 is a passive and it's called Sparkling Missile. It says activates when firing the last bullet, affects 2 enemy units with the highest attack, deals 382.42% of final attack as damage, activates when firing the last bullet, affects self, damage to interrupt parts up 6.91 for 10 seconds. Alright, so please note this is going to affect your whole team, so you don't have to worry if they're electric or not. This is going to be applied to all the Nikkes that are currently on the field. And also please note that on this passive it says on the last bullet fired. So since she has a high reload speed thanks to her passive, and not only that, if you do happen to stack her with for example Privity, that's going to lower down how much is her ammo clip, and she's able to produce this final the last bullet effect constantly because she's going to buff herself, and also Privity is going to buff her as well. So she'll be able to use this passive a great deal. And she's not only that, it's looking like she's going to be producing a lot of damage as well. I mean, doing this damage to interrupt parts is helpful as well. I mean, there's not a lot of raptures that have this. I know the boss do, but for the regular campaign, some of the regular raptures do not have that interruption parts. So please do keep that in mind. But I could see her being quite strong with it with the right team. And now lastly, it's the burst skill. It's going to be called Sparkling Wave, and it's going to be 40 seconds. And it says affect self, so max ammo capacity down 73.92% for 10 seconds, reload speed up for 27.72% for 10 seconds, and damage as strong element 42.24% for 10 seconds. So this burst skill that she has, it's very selfish, so it's only going to be really just for her. But thankfully, thanks to her passive, her skill 2 being a passive with the last bullet and the burst, effectively how much her ammo clip is. So even if you don't use Privity, just by herself, she's able to do it excellent as well. But if you do happen to use Privity, it will boost up her damage because you're technically going to be taking an advantage of the skill 2 throughout the whole battle. Since once the burst cools down, then you can just go ahead and just do this again. And yeah, you'll be able. So how I'm looking at it, she'll be able to output a lot of damage just by herself. And not only that, she will be boosting electric code allies. So luckily there are some very powerful Nikkes that are electric code. And yeah, I could see her being, even though she is a supporter, a lot of her kit feels like it's an attacker. So she's like a little hidden attacker. So yeah, I could see her as a very strong contender to being pulled. I believe people will be pulling on her. Alright, next up is going to be none other than Helm Aquamarine. Her type is going to be attacker, her burst skill is going to be 2, her weapon is an assault rifle, and her code is iron. Her skill 1 is a passive and it's called Admire Accompaniment. Activate after landing 30 normal attacks, affects the targets. Deals 131.34% of final attack as damage. Activates when entering full burst, affects all allies. Effects change according to the activation times previous effects trigger repeatedly. So once the cooldown burst goes down to 1.82, twice it stacks and it's going to increase by 2.2 seconds. and then the 3 times it increases even further to 2.6 on top. All right, so let me just say this really quick. So in terms of people who don't fully understand what the bottom part of this skill 1 is that you pretty much have to burst 3 times to fully utilize this skill, because each time you burst, it's gonna apply the line additional. So first it's gonna do this once, and then once you burst the second time, it's gonna do once and twice, and once you burst the third time, it's gonna do once, twice, and 3 times there. So in order to fully utilize skill 1, you need to burst 3 times, which most people will on a regular campaign there. And also as well, right here it says activates after landing 30 normal attacks. So just by her just attacking, she's going to be dealing additional damage as well. Since she's an assault rifle, I mean, she's going to have a good cartridge size, and I could see that that she's able to output quite a bit of damage. You know, it's nothing bad, so it's pretty good damage there. And skill number 2, it says Aegis Cannon Suppression Fire, and it's active. Its cooldown time is 4 seconds. It says affects one enemy unit randomly, deals 105.58% of final attack as damage, affects the same targets when they belong to Electric Code. Damage taken up 5.64%, stacks up to 5 times, and lasts for 5 seconds. All right, so this is so for her skill 2, it's really going to be more useful if they're part of the Electric Code, since it's going to deal additional damage. But unfortunately, if they're not an Electric Code at all, the damage taken up will not be applied to them. So it's only going to be able to deal the 105.58 attack as damage, and only that, it's one randomly. So unfortunately, you can't even decide on what unit or what enemy unit you want to use it on. So as soon as it's activated, it's going to attack any, so not even the strongest, so not even if it's the boss enemy of the stage. It could even do a random projectile or anything like that. So unfortunately, because of the randomly, skill 2 isn't that good, just because of the randomly. All right, and lastly, it's going to be the burst skill, Aegis Cannon Overload. It's active, and the cooldown time is 20 seconds. It says affects all enemy, deals 164.83% of final attack as damage, affects the same targets when they belong to Electric Code, deals 164.83% of final attack as additional damage. Again, just like I said previously, to fully utilize this, the enemy has to be an Electric Code, because that way you'll get a combined total of 348 or 349 once you have the 0.83 there percent is damage, which unfortunately, if they're not Electric Code, it's only gonna be the 164. So the burst itself isn't that bad, but seeing how her kit is, she's mostly there for Electric Coded enemies. Yeah, so how I'm looking at Helm here, she's gonna be more towards a niche. I believe it's going to be more, hey, you know, if you're dealing with electric enemies, which, you know, luckily for Union Raid and Solo Raid, each of those raptures, the boss raptures, they're going to be a certain element, and I could see them using her for that, so they could go ahead and deal with them and reach the higher ranks faster. But other than that, in terms of regular PvE or anything like that, yeah, I mean, the cooldown reduction is good. So that is helpful, because I mean, there's Dala and there's Volume that do the cooldown reduction. I could see Dala being more useful than Helm, how I'm looking at it right now, unfortunately, just because to fully utilize her, it's going to be the Electric Code. All right, and if I had to pull between one of these two units, I would be leaning more towards ANIS, just because how I'm looking at her kit. Even though she is a supporter, I mean, a lot of her kit will help her deal a lot of damage, and not only that, she's able to help out one of the best damage dealing Nikkes in the game, Scarlet, as well. So that's going to further boost up her abilities, which will help out you and the team tremendously. On top of that, you could also add another Nikke to the mix, for example, Privity, which will even help ANIS's damage way more. I mean, even if you don't even burst with ANIS, I mean, having the last bullet effect and having that constantly being put out, if you do happen to use ANIS and then Privity, yeah, I could see her being like a mini damage dealer, even though she's a supporter. Unfortunately for Helm, how I was mentioning earlier, yeah, it's just because of the Electric Code that I'm seeing. Yeah, she's going to be very niche. She's going to be for certain team comps, you know, with certain Nikkes that are effective to taking down Electric Code. But other than that, yeah, so if I did have to pull for one, I would just pull for ANIS for sure. But for me, since I'm more of a collector, I'm going to be pulling for both regardless. And hey, their bikinis are fantastic. So other than that, I mean, that's pretty much it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Scrublord out.